global energy transition is accelerating, and green hydrogen will be key to decarbonise hard-to-abate industries. But the plans for green hydrogen face a critical challenge. How can we finance and build the infrastructure for production, transport and storage on a global scale? What investments and policy actions are needed? And how can international collaboration kick off supply and demand?
Welcome everyone to our third plenary session here in the Weltsaal. We've touched on green hydrogen already a number of times during our discussions today. Now we want to drill deeper and ask how we can accelerate the global ramp-up of a resource that's expected to play a key role in achieving greenhouse gas neutrality, especially in hard-to-decarbonize sectors like heavy industry and heavy transport. And I say expected because the global GH2 industry is still in an early phase. Pilot projects are being set up, but an international market with physical trade of green hydrogen and its derivatives has yet to fully get off the ground. And that creates what's sometimes referred to as the chicken and egg dilemma, namely investors want to see offtake agreements before they commit sizable funds, while potential off-takers want to see clear development plans for reliable supply. So our panel will be asking how we close the gap between the chickens and the eggs. What role would larger and better infrastructure play in catalyzing both supply and demand of green hydrogen? What instruments and arrangements are needed to ensure adequate financing for infrastructure across the entire green hydrogen supply chain? And how can international governmental cooperation support the development of infrastructure for safe and cost-efficient supply? Also, what support can enhance emerging market and developing economies' participation in the scale-up? Those are our key questions. We have an outstanding panel with us to answer them. I begin my introductions here, and I'm going to keep them short to maximize our time for discussion. We have with us the Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources of Egypt, His Excellency Karim Badawi. Welcome to you. Also joining us, the Deputy Minister of Energy for Kazakhstan, Bakistan İlyas. He is welcome as well. We're very pleased to have you. And he will be speaking in Russian, just in case you are looking for translation later on. Seated next to him, Hanan El Hamraoui is the Deputy CEO of HDF Energy. It is a leading global player in hydrogen. She also sits on its board of directors, and she's the president of HDF's Moroccan subsidiary, Hydrogène du Maroc. Welcome to you. Claudio Barbaro is State Secretary for the Environment and Energy Security of Italy, and you're very welcome. Glad to have you with us, and you will be speaking in Italian for those who wish to have translation. And yes, thank you. And finally, it's a pleasure to welcome Frederik Wisselink. He's Energy Envoy at the Netherlands Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy. Great to have you with us as well. Before we get started, I would like to do one Slido question to get our audience's input on our topic. And our question is this: what are currently the main barriers to growth of an international green hydrogen market? And you see here a number of different options for your answers: lack of market demand and off-takers, missing transport and storage infrastructure, non-uniform standards and certification, bottlenecks in electrolyzer production, and high cost of capital. Those are our options. Please vote now, and we'll come back and look at the result after we hear a scene setter from Minister Badawi. And you agreed to kindly set out for us Egypt's impressive ambitions for development of green hydrogen. So take it away.
Thank you very much. So first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here with such esteemed panelists and audience and partners. So first of all, I wanted just to bring in about Egypt, a little bit of a background. Egypt stands at the corner, in Africa, gateway to Europe, to the Middle East. Egypt has a market of 120 million people, living in Egypt, with major infrastructure in terms of roads, railways, airports, and infrastructure in various sectors. So I would like to maybe set the scene, and this will tie up to the green hydrogen story, by bringing in a quick kind of highlight on the 6 key pillars, right, for the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources, which actually kind of links to the hydrogen story. And those key pillars really for us is really revolving around, a firm belief that the energy mix, right, of tomorrow will be an energy mix which will have room for all the different types of energy sources. And based on that, our first pillar really of focus is really in terms on how we can maximize, production, right, in terms on oil and gas to unlock that potential, with a very big focus on gas as a key energy, transition, for the future, and how we can do that with a low carbon intensity and also at the lowest cost, for the end consumers. And the second kind of pillar for us is really in terms on how we can leverage infrastructure that we have, built, over the last few years in Egypt, related to petrochemical sector, linked to the refinery sector, linked to the LNG export capability sector and so forth, and how we can really enable that infrastructure to be able to create value not only for the people of Egypt, but really for the people of the region, and to leverage this infrastructure to be able to be a conduit really for value-added derivatives, for Europe, whether in terms on green derivatives, or in terms on value-added products from refinery or transition and energy such as gas, for Europe. And the third pillar that we're focusing on is on the mining sector. Mining sector is very, very important, and mining sector is becoming more and more critical as part of the energy transition in terms of the minerals required, both in terms of the technology required, for the technologies required for development of green hydrogen and other, transition technologies, and as well in terms on the minerals which will also be required for supply chain demand for within the region. And the fourth pillar for us to be able to maximize value from these is really around the energy mix, is how it is important for Egypt to create the optimum energy mix. And this is where really we have, together with the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable, increased the percentage of renewable energy as part of our energy mix to 42% by 2030. And this is very important because by really accelerating this target, this really kind of helps Egypt to be able to unlock value from its natural resources such as wind, solar, and we also have nuclear to be able to provide green electrons to be able to fuel the hydrogen, the green hydrogen future, and to have a conduit for export for Europe of green, electrons going forward. And to be able to be successful in those, the fifth pillar is very important for us, which is related to the health and safety, right, of everyone working in the sector, but also in terms on the climate. Climate is very important for us to make sure that we have a sustainable, processes in all of our, operations to ensure that we look after the climate for the future generations, and that we also look in terms on the energy efficiency front. And this is very important for us to unlock the full value from the resources that we do have available. And then last but not least, which is really kind of the spirit of the success, which is really about collaboration, regional collaboration, and how we can really have Egypt be able to be at the heart of the collaboration with providing Europe and the rest of the world with, green hydrogen, with the different forms of energies which will be required, for the development and advancement, right, of the societies in Europe and around the world, and how we can really foster collaboration between governments to really enable the private sector in both, in the different parts of the, of the sectors to really thrive. And we want to firm believe that the success of the private sector is also the success of the government, and also the success of the collaboration, whether bilateral or collaboration within the region, will enable really a great success story for the green hydrogen to be able to succeed in the future. And then maybe my last comment also before leaving also the room for my esteemed colleagues is to look at when we look at hydrogen. Hydrogen will be a key element of the energy mix of the future. I do not believe that there is many doubts around this. I believe now it is really about how we can make that happen at the lowest cost and in terms on, with an accelerated, way. And this will only come by really looking at reliable sources of renewable energy to be able to provide those green electrons, how we can provide, the right technology on the electrolyzers in terms of being able to produce, that hydrogen effectively, efficiently, and at the lowest cost for the consumer, and how we can foster an environment whereby we also provide the source of water, source of renewable, and source of where the manufacturing will take place to be as close as possible, again, to minimize really the cost for the end consumer, and to be also as close as possible to the distribution channels, which again, really Egypt plays a key regional role to be able to be a hub in the future for that, and the role of policies, frameworks to ensure attraction of investment into the green hydrogen is something as well which is a collective responsibility to be able to foster that environment, to increase investment, technology innovation, and stronger partnership and collaboration both from infrastructure and in terms of trade.
Thank you very much. So big aspirations there for Egypt. Let us now take a look with the rest of our esteemed panelists at the status of green hydrogen infrastructure. But before we do that, I want to very quickly get a read on our poll that we did a moment ago. So hopefully everybody in the audience can see this poll result as well. Could we get that up on screen for the audience as well? You're seeing it? Good. Okay, excellent. So largest share by far, 45% say it's the lack of market demand and off-takers, indeed, that is holding up development of a scale-up of the market. Then after that, we have missing transport and storage infrastructure. 22% see that as a main barrier, and 22% as well see high cost of capital. And then it drops off significantly when it comes to standards and electrolyzer production. So bearing that result in mind, let me now ask the rest of the panel to comment. And I'll start with Deputy Minister Ilyas, if I may. And Kazakhstan also has big aspirations for green hydrogen. You last year announced a 2040 hydrogen development concept that puts a focus on utilizing hydrogen both to decarbonize domestic industries and also to promote economic diversification. So tell us more, if you would, about your strategy and how you plan to finance the necessary infrastructure, given the fact that you are the 9th largest country in the world by area.
Во-первых, разрешите от имени Министерства энергетики поблагодарить за...
Let me start by thanking you on behalf of the Minister of Energy. Thank you very much for the invitation to the BTD. It is a great honor to present to you about the development of infrastructure and of green hydrogen. It's a key enabling technology for the green energy transition. Green hydrogen is a political priority. It is a chance for Kazakhstan to implement the energy transition and to also diversify our economy. In 2023, we presented a concept on the development of green hydrogen by 2030. We have 3 focal areas for, first of all, production, secondly, the infrastructure, and third, the sales market development. Our objective is to attract investment, to develop technologies, and also to train skilled workers in this field. We'd like to build an equilibrium between the use of hydrogen domestically and for export. This is because in the future, we might be able to actually leave fossil fuels behind and promote economic growth on the basis of green hydrogen. Important sectors for green hydrogen could potentially be metallurgy, which is a key sector for our economy. We would also like to replace coal with green hydrogen. The second important sector for us is agriculture, third is oil and gas, the fourth sector is transport, and by that I mean on land and maritime transport. International cooperation with Germany is very important. The Foreign Chamber of Commerce supports us in Astana. We have various colloquiums, we have training for skilled labor, and we want to focus even more on projects for green hydrogen. This is co-financed by GIZ and by DENA, the German Energy Agency. All this will support our country in modernizing our economy. Of course, there is a major need for investment in order to develop new technologies and infrastructure. An important role in this will be played by long-term contracts, climate finance, and technologies such as Power-to-X. For Kazakhstan, hydrogen is not only important for decarbonization, it is also a means of strengthening our economy, of attracting investment, and of actually having a firm place in the international community. We're looking forward to this international cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll go over to Hanan El Hamraoui, if I may. And HDF's current project pipeline amounts to over 5 billion euros in nearly 20 countries. So say a bit, if you would, about what kind of infrastructure you are using to bring hydrogen to your plants, and where the most important or obstructive bottlenecks arise currently. Also, what kind of hydrogen infrastructure do you believe investors need to be focusing on now?
Yeah, hello everyone. Excuse me, I'm a little bit sick. So nice to meet you, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm the only representative of the private sector here, so I'm very happy to represent my colleagues. So HDF Energy, which stands for Hydrogène de France. So the aim of HDF Energy is to produce hydrogen and to work on the hydrogen economy. And as a private company, we needed to focus on the short-term market as well. So we look at which kind of infrastructure we can develop in order to make the hydrogen competitive and the hydrogen happening now and not in 10 years ahead. So what we have developed is coming also from the renewable energy, is the next generation of the renewable energy. As everyone knows here, the renewable energy are intermittent. There is a lot of countries that try to develop massively the renewable energy in order to bring some independency as well in terms of energy. But the issue is that if there is no sun, there is no electricity. So we need to store the renewable energy. And the hydrogen play a very central role by storing massively the renewable energy. And this is what HDF is bringing. We are developing a renewable power plant with hydrogen storage inside. So basically, it's a hybrid power plant combining renewable electricity, electrolyzer to produce hydrogen locally on site. And then after, we use the fuel cells to produce electricity through hydrogen, for example, during the night, if we are talking about solar electricity. So we are not depending on any infrastructure for our projects. So we are very integrated and excuse me, and we are not selling any green molecules. We are selling electrons. So for us, it was interesting as a short-term market to start with something that is already there. So the power plant is already there, the PPA are already in place. We are very duplicated the model from the renewable energy on the model of what we call the Renew Stable for renewable stable project. So this is the initiative developed by HDF. So we have a PPA of 25 years. Our off-taker is the utility grid. So we sell the electricity to the grid. And we give also to the country where we are located some independence in terms of power sector, but also a stable electricity during 25 years and not depending on any fossil fuel import as well. So this is how HDF, we play a role in this market by bringing this kind of infrastructure. We work on hydrogen. We have hydrogen production in our project, and we have succeeded in a project in French Guiana called CIOG to show to the private sector that hydrogen can be competitive and can be bankable. So one of the main issues everyone can face on the hydrogen is how can we bring the private sector to finance those kind of projects. So we need technology that has to be bankable. We need also to find a good balance between the equity and the debt. And on the project in French Guiana, it's a 14 megawatt of electrolyzer, 3 megawatt of fuel cells. So we are providing 10 megawatt during the day to the grid, to the day, and 3 megawatts during the night. It's a 25 years PPA. Siemens Energy, the German company, is the EPC of this power plant. And we have succeeded to have a project finance scheme for 80% of debt, 20% of equity. Only private sector that has financed this project, commercial banks. So this is how we succeed for the short term. But on the other side, HDF is also working on pure H2 production project, H2 production for green ammonia, but also for e-fuels. And when we are working on this kind of infrastructure, for sure, we need that the other infrastructure, like that the port has to be well developed to welcome this kind of green molecule, but also we need desalination infrastructure for the water, and we are also working on the mobility sector, on the maritime and the railway sector, and on those sectors as well, our client, they need to have hydrogen on point A to point B. So for sure, on those kind of application, the infrastructure is a key. And I see from the audience that the market demand and the off-taker is the highest maybe concern. I can just say that for me, if we have a good availability of hydrogen from point A to point B, we have the good infrastructure, for sure the off-taker will come because everyone wants to decarbonize, but at a good price and with a good supply chain.
Thank you very much, and a very interesting shorter-term, longer-term perspective there on starting with what you've already got and building on that, and then longer-term looking at how we get that infrastructure into place. Let me go to Italy now and Claudio Barbaro. And Italy's national hydrogen strategy focuses on building around 50 hydrogen hubs across the country linked by an integrated hydrogen transport network, as I understand it. What exactly does that mean for infrastructure build-out in Italy, and how will that be financed? What instruments and structures are you looking at? It's on. Yep, it's on.
Grazie per l'invito e grazie anche per l'argomento sul quale
Thank you very much for inviting me and also for inviting me to speak on this issue, because Italy has introduced a national strategy in November 2024. This strategy is about 6 to 12 MTEB of hydrogen, so up to 12 gigawatts of electrolyzers. So under this strategy, hydrogen is considered a very fundamental solution for decarbonization, also in the larger context of the national energy and climate plan by 2030 and by the European plan up to 2050. So in order to decarbonize our economy, we need various sources, including renewable energies. We need to reduce CO2 emissions. We need biofuels. We need methane. We need hydrogen. We also need nuclear energy. Of course, renewable energy will be an important part of decarbonizing processes that are very difficult to decarbonize at present. I'm talking about hard-to-abate emissions, heavy transport, heavy industry, and so forth. Maritime transport, aviation, heavy-duty transport. So infrastructure, of course, is key in the development of hydrogen. So Italy's strategy on hydrogen is based on the Southern Hydrogen Corridor, and the Italian backbone is very important here. So imports to Italy are supposed to be able to flow better. So we have special pillars here ranging from the Mediterranean corridor or the Southern corridor, and that includes a maritime component, to other corridors. We see major opportunities for Italy, including maritime transport. Green synthetic fuels can also be used for transport, and this, in turn, could be an important part of the strategy to convert ammonia. Last but not least, Italy also wants to implement an EU directive and also provide better financing for green hydrogen.
Thank you very much. And finally, to the Netherlands energy envoy, Mr. Wisselink. The Netherlands, we spoke earlier about working with what you've already got, and the Netherlands has got quite a lot. You have a sizable grey hydrogen sector that is ready to be decarbonized. You have an extensive pipeline network that could be repurposed. You've got offshore wind potential that's huge, and your ports could become one of Europe's prime import hubs for green hydrogen from overseas. So does that mean it's just full steam ahead when it comes to expanding green hydrogen, or do you still encounter some obstacles?
Thank you for the question, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, this is an important question, and also the concern shared by you through Slido. When will the offtake actually take off is an important question. Also, something we consider as a serious issue. But first, let me say something about the current market condition for hydrogen. We all know, and we all experience that there is the current market condition is not very good. We have to face that. There was a huge optimism a few years ago. Now we have a kind of reality check for green hydrogen. But we should not distract us from our goals to create this international hydrogen market. Because, for instance, the LNG market, it took years for this commodity to mature. For other commodities as well. I just heard in another panel that the case for solar and the price of solar energy dropped 90% in 15 years. So we have to be patient as well, and we have to stay confident in the opportunities, the huge opportunities of green hydrogen. And well, like the Spanish secretary said in the previous panel, it's green baby green instead of drill baby drill. I will remember that one. Well, as you may know, the Netherlands is keen on establishing the hydrogen market. We want to establish the corridors between producing countries and the demand in Northwestern Europe. And therefore, our strategy has been from day one to build a backbone of hydrogen. So we have to have the infrastructure in place, firstly. So what are the solutions, the actions we have taken to overcome the infrastructure issue. We have appointed a hydrogen network operator to develop the national hydrogen transport network. And we have introduced subsidies to lower tariffs for the first users of this pipeline network. We have made a huge funding available for the development of import terminals and the development of reconversion facilities for hydrogen carriers, as well funding for underground storage sites for hydrogen in salt caverns in the northern part of the Netherlands. And they all combined allow for the connection of green hydrogen production and the demand of the industry. And our ports will play an important role, obviously. These ports will act as a gateway to the Northwest European market, German market, Belgian market, and will connect supply and demand very efficiently, because the ports are the locations where, like you said, hydrogen is already produced and used. Furthermore, next action, clarity on regulation of import terminals is fundamental for businesses to take the final investment decisions. And our regulator has published guidelines on how open access rules should be applied. Then on the carriers, we know that ammonia will play an important role as a carrier in the nearby future, but we would also like to stimulate alternative carriers to diversify the portfolio. And liquid organic hydrogen carriers and liquid hydrogen are still not applicable on the large scale, but we are working on setting up knowledge communities and research programs to stimulate this technology further. So this package of measures, real concrete measures, are all aimed to expand and complete our hydrogen infrastructure in the Netherlands. And in all scenarios, and I think that is the key message from me today, in all scenarios, the development of our import terminals, the development of reconversion facilities for hydrogen and hydrogen-based products will become very, very important. This is our priority. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to suggest that we now do a second round of discussion looking beyond national goals and aspirations to international cooperation, because we've said again and again over the course of this first day of the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue that despite all the concern about energy security and domestic competitiveness, we must stay focused on the collaborative side of the global energy transition. So let's talk about where international cooperation is going to be most important to get the scale up of green hydrogen that all of you are looking for, and also as support for producers in emerging markets and developing economies, because of course these are often the places with most access to the renewables that can provide the basis for affordable green hydrogen. So I'll start with Minister Badawi, if I may, and your national low carbon hydrogen strategy projects that investments in low carbon hydrogen can raise GDP by $18 billion by 2040 and create over 100,000 skilled jobs. What kind of international partnerships will be needed to build those gains to essentially realize the strategy's goals?
Thank you for the question, and I think the way you framed it is absolutely correct. It's collaboration and partnership and getting all the different stakeholders together. So, as a government, we've taken steps in terms of providing incentives to help attract investment into the green hydrogen and lower down the cost, right, in terms of production of green hydrogen in Egypt, leveraging the existing infrastructure. And those incentives range from various different types of fiscal regimes in terms of within Egypt, or in terms on taxes on export of goods in terms of green hydrogen and so forth. But the key is also we've taken a very important decision of making sure that success breeds success, and that we wanted to make sure that we do not, sign just, MOUs of collaboration, but we really kind of move to practical, actual collaboration and actual projects as success stories that actually can emulate further success stories. And I think, one of such success stories is really how we work together between government, private sector, in looking in terms on what does it take to have a project to kick off the ground and materialize that we can showcase, and we can also learn from, because there's also a learning journey actually as part of that. And I think we've signed a project with Scatec to develop actually green ammonia and to produce 160,000 tons of green ammonia. And in terms of being able to do that, it was not possible without actually having an answer to the question that you raised, which was about, okay, so who's the off-taker? If you want to make something real, you also want to make sure that you have the off-taker, being there. And you also talked about the financing element of it. And I think this project is a big success story because we've managed to have together, a developer such as Scatec, together with an offtake, agreement, with a company, fertilizer company called Yara, right, from Norway. And also the way the funding actually for this project to be able to materialize was a funding which was done in collaboration between private sector, the European Union, and actually German banks and German institutions, for the benefit of getting this project to materialize. And again, leveraging existing infrastructure that we're doing actually with one of our fertilizer companies in Egypt, which is called Mopco, and how we can convert part of this actually fertilizer company into a green fertilizer company and so forth. So how we can really also leverage existing infrastructure and deliver a green ammonia project in full partnership with the private sector, with the government. And when I say also the government, I talk about the different, ministries within the government, because again, you have different ministries involved. You have, finance, you have Minister of Petroleum, you have Minister of Electricity and Renewable, looking at what are the optimum also, agreement, for wheeling, for generation in terms of renewable, and on what are the requirements, and this is how we made that happen. And we are still actually working together, in this journey. Is our ambition is how this project will succeed. What do we need to do? What do the different stakeholders need to do to make this project successful? Because you have the off-taker, the developer, the technology, the country, will, and in terms of the geographical location, and will be a very good proof point in terms of international collaboration, private sector, and providing a gateway for green hydrogen to the European market.
Let me ask you this, because the answer to that question depends a little bit whether your main goal is export or whether it's domestic industrial uses. And many countries, and perhaps especially EMDEs, are looking toward both. What challenges arise in trying to balance those two goals?
I believe the main challenge is just to be pragmatic and to be realistic in terms of what is the priority. Because again, as for Egypt today, is the main priority the local market for green hydrogen? Probably not. Because again, the cost of green hydrogen is probably much higher than what the local market can afford. However, Egypt has all the ingredients to be able to provide the lowest cost hydrogen for the demand in Europe, which can afford that price, that price point, and then leveraging the value creation in Egypt to provide the lowest, cost, lowest, emission in terms of green hydrogen for an export market. Mm-hmm. But in the journey of doing that, we will go through a learning process. So as our market in Egypt grows into the future and that market develops, then we'll be able to make that transition for the local market.
So very much, again, thinking short to medium term and thinking longer term about how to create that balance. Thank you. Let me go over to Mr. Ilyas. And again, a similar question to you. You also have aspirations both to be a major exporter, but also to use hydrogen for domestic decarbonization. So starting with the export piece of this, what exporting routes for green hydrogen and its derivatives do you envisage going forward? And what kind of international cooperation would be necessary to bring about the kind of infrastructure that can make those exports viable for Kazakhstan?
Well, thank you so much for your question. And let me add, before answering your question, that Kazakhstan has huge potential when it comes to solar and wind energy. We are a very attractive region for the production of green hydrogen. We've already launched large-scale projects like Horizon 1, one of the biggest hydrogen projects in our region, and that is, of course, also focused on exporting hydrogen. We are looking at a variety of options when it comes to exporting hydrogen. We're at the very start of this journey. We want to first off use existing pipelines, so gas pipelines. We want to modernize those and integrate them into the southern gas corridor. So that is one of the options that we are considering that would allow us to, for example, have a pipeline through the Caspian Sea, export electricity potentially as well via electricity cables. Then we could use liquid ammonia as a carrier of the hydrogen that we created. That is easier and safer to transport using our maritime ports and rail transport. So liquid hydrogen and other international corridors that we might be able to use would allow us to export hydrogen to China, but also towards Europe. So we have a variety of infrastructure projects planned, projects that involve transport via the Caspian Sea. So we have hydrogen and ammonia that we would use to export then via the Kuruk harbor. So we'd have to expand the infrastructure at that harbor, and that would be one of the key harbors for us to facilitate that export. And we, again, as I said, also want to use the existing gas pipelines to export hydrogen. Now, we want to use these existing corridors also when it comes to rail and road transport. So that is infrastructure that allows us to connect to international markets. I think we need active cooperation with other countries in order to attract investment that would allow us then to focus our investment in infrastructure. It is, I think, important to participate in international programs such as the Global Gateway or the Belt Initiative that would allow us to secure funding. We also need long-term contracts that would provide a stable environment for selling and exporting hydrogen. I think that there are important corridors that we want to tap into, and that we need harmonized standards that would allow us a stable export along those corridors. I think we need to further develop our export infrastructure, and we need investment, international cooperation, integration in international supply chains for hydrogen production and export.
Thank you very much. I'll jump over to State Secretary Barbaro now, if I may, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about the South 2 corridor that you mentioned in your earlier remarks. This is a collaboration with Austria and Germany, linking consumers in the European Union with producers in North Africa. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about both the status of the South H2 corridor and also how the project is supporting delivering countries, producing countries, as they seek to develop green hydrogen production. So picking up on the international cooperation piece of this, especially in regard to those producer countries.
Sì, grazie.
Well, thank you so much. The South H2 corridor project has been quite successful so far. And we've taken important measures in Rome last year, summer last year. I think that's an important step that we took. And then in March 25, just a couple of weeks ago, we met in Stuttgart again to decide on measures that are taking us towards achieving our goals in the context of this project. And I think the international cooperation is very important, of course. Now, Switzerland also participated in those talks, and they supported us. We together developed a roadmap, a work program, and also established a couple of milestones, activities, measures that are part now of this project that we want to implement. Italy also has a strategic plan for this as well. And we are, of course, focused on the midstream business here. We are the country that is very much involved in this project. Now, the countries that will function as off-takers of that production, with them we want to launch a variety of initiatives that would develop contractual standards and details to be established by the 2030s. So we're closely cooperating with Austria, for example, on this. And when it comes to international cooperation, we want to really establish projects that lead the way in terms of hydrogen production, hydrogen markets. And I think a corridor via Italy and towards Central Europe is vital to do this, that allows us to use this resource and to transfer it to Europe and to Central Europe in particular. Now, when it comes to importing hydrogen, we've seen that Italy is capable of overcoming the challenge, really, that is a volatile international market, an uncertain market environment. And I think we can work even in that environment. We, I think, have to work in this volatile environment by being flexible, maybe closing short-term contracts and longer-term contracts on the side of the producers, so longer term for the producers, shorter term for the consumers. And we also have the H2 global measure that we perceive as a very positive development that is part of our toolbox. Italy has also looked at ways that we ourselves can promote such H2 hydrogen corridors and potentially repurpose or retrofit LNG corridors and LNG pipelines. And we've seen that we can function as a hub, so to say, for introducing more hydrogen production transport. So that is one of the many ways that we also see as a way to, for example, use existing liquid natural gas storage and repurpose that to store hydrogen, liquid hydrogen. And that is one of the important factors for us, as we are strategically located with our partners at the Mediterranean Sea, and we have also developed a national plan that has global and international implications in our cooperation with the African continent. We know that this is a central development going forward, because the African continent is going to be a key player when it comes to further developing hydrogen production and renewables. We know that we have to work and to cooperate with our partners on the African continents on eye level, and we should not in any way perceive this as a way to exploit the resources on the African continent. I think we have to enable our African partners to be in a better position to tap into the financing that is available and to cooperate with international and regional partners.
Frederick Wisselink with a similar question, if I may. The ports of Rotterdam and Amsterdam have concluded agreements already with producer countries. How does the Dutch government support its ports in terms of their green hydrogen strategy? And in particular, how is it cooperating with international partners to establish future maritime trade routes, as well as with producer countries to support their exporting capacities?
Well, yeah, again, an important question, and I think the panel already touched upon this. The Egyptian minister and my Italian colleague, the State Secretary, said some very important things about that, but I will add that from the Dutch perspective. Well, I think we have to make sure that the international market for hydrogen takes off in a way that it serves both exporting and importing countries, period. And we have to make sure that the conditions and standardization and certification are put in place in time. So international collaboration is key, obviously, and that is the reason why we are very, very active in this international dialogue. For example, we have established within the Clean Energy Ministerial, we have established together with the UAE, the International Hydrogen Trade Forum. And within this forum, we stimulate the dialogue between ministers, ports, CEOs, on all the bottlenecks and all the opportunities, financing mechanisms that are needed. And also we have bilateral supports to exporting countries. For instance, we share our knowledge, also from the ports, on policy and technology, via bilateral and multilateral relationships. And like you said, H2 Global is a very important instrument. Also referring to the Slido, to create the offtake. H2 Global will, and this year the second phase will be introduced, will set a price signal to the hydrogen market, and it will, it creates offtake guarantees this year. So the second phase of funding will be launched later this year. Furthermore, we have established a pilot with export credit guarantees for hydrogen producers seeking to export hydrogen and its derivatives to the ports in the Netherlands. And finally, one word where you already touched upon, that is the domestic usage of hydrogen. They must have local, sustainable and social impact. And quite a few countries have reached out to the Netherlands for collaboration in the field of the international hydrogen supply chain. And in our MOUs, we include explicit reference to the UN Social Development Goals. And, well, in the previous panels, the huge potential of renewable energy in Africa was already touched upon. I think this is explicitly key for expanding the rollout of renewable energy for electricity usage, but also for the surplus to be, well, to make green hydrogen of it and export it to where the demand is in any place of the world. So, and we see that Dutch stakeholders are already active on this field and to help to build this social trust. For example, Invest International, a Dutch investment entity, support the government of Namibia with financing capacity building for implementation of hydrogen policies. And to conclude, well, this is a no-brainer. We have to collaborate. We have to collaborate to advance the international hydrogen market. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And finally, Hanan El Hamraoui, HDF Energy has projects, as I said, in around 20 countries around the globe, with a particular focus on Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Majority are, of course, emerging markets and developing economies. So what is your assessment of the role of international cooperation in expanding hydrogen infrastructure and production in these countries? And what kind of cooperation will be most essential for them to really scale up?
Thank you for the question. Just before answering your question, I wanted to emphasize what my colleague from Netherlands has saying, the fact that on all emerging industry, there is up and down. Last year, we were on the down on the hydrogen, but I want to bring some optimistic view also on the market. I'm from the private sector. I have been there for 12 years now, so I'm still there. The company is still there, and a lot of companies are still working also on the hydrogen. Hydrogen will really play a big role on the transition, but it's an emerging industry. It will take time. We need to be patient, and we really need, of course, to join forces and to make projects happening. Then after the industry will scale up, and as you said, for the solar, I was working on the solar industry, was crazy. We had only like 2 years of guarantee for solar panels. Now it's 30 years of guarantee, so it will happen, and we just need to be patient. So to answer to your question, of course, we are working on emerging countries. Emerging countries, there is tremendous renewable energy resources, very big opportunities, but also some challenges in terms of political situation, economical situation, energy access as well. So we need some cooperation, and international cooperation can help also to de-risk the investment on those countries, because at the end, it's always linked to investment, to financing those kind of projects, even if it makes sense, even if we have all the ingredients reunited to make the project, then after we need some project bankable, and that the private sector also to come in order to make this market a reality and not just to very rely on public subsidies. So just to give also from the private sector some concrete example to keep this optimistic things to show you that projects are happening. We have a project in Barbados, so emerging country island as well. More like touristic islands, so we have also some issue to find some company that will do the construction of our project. So this is where we work also with international cooperation to see on which country we can find also the workforces to build also this kind of a hydrogen project. And also in terms of financing, we need to de-risk and to welcome the private sector. So this is where the blended finance instrument will play a role by having also the concessional loans by the development agency, by the bank like the World Bank, the GCF as well, the IFC, that will help to de-risk the project, help to make the project also more competitive. And this is what we have succeeded in this project in Barbados, having $40 million for 40 of concessional loans from the Green Climate Fund from the World Bank. So it has been the first project in the world on the hydrogen that welcomed this kind of concessional loans, but this is happening. And of course, we need also to see with this kind of process how we can speed up, because it's a very long process as well to get this kind of concessional loans. So in terms of project planning, this is something that we need maybe to improve also with this kind of international cooperation. And then, as you said, Vice Minister, that the Global Gateway, for instance, this kind of initiative is really a good initiative. So the EU has launched this initiative. For instance, HDF has been flagged Global Gateway for the Barbados project. Ursula von der Leyen, she endorsed the project 1 month ago in Barbados with the Prime Minister, Mia Mottley. And then after, because we were flagged Global Gateway in Barbados, and we have the discussion with the EIB to help to finance also also the debt. We have been also in discussion in South Africa with the EU, but also in Indonesia. So this kind of initiative, international initiative, can help also the private sector to be flagged, to help also the process, because it's a very long process as well to be flagged for this kind of initiative, and then to duplicate to different regions in the world where we have projects in order to bring some blended finance and to welcome the private sector also to finance those projects to make it a reality.
Thank you very much for sharing that example. Tomorrow we will hear a keynote from the head of the Greening the Islands Foundation, who says, in fact, that small island states are often laboratories for innovative solutions. So very interesting. And in fact, you and Minister Badawi pointed out that nothing succeeds like success. Having examples of workable, viable projects is one of the ways to get the scale up that all of us need. You've all shared a good deal of optimism. I won't try to pin you down about how long it's going to take. You reminded us it took 15 years to get solar prices to drop by 90%. Perhaps it can be done quicker here, but in any event, you have all shared big plans and aspirations and a lot of very, very useful and interesting ideas. So many thanks for that. Let's give them a warm round of applause, please.